Story 1. Paying for individual packages of drinking water that is simply filtered tap water. The packaging is worth more than the contents. Canned breathable air is next. Story 2. Any subscription service for property that was previously available for purchase now requires ongoing payment for perpetual access to content. Story 3. Microtransactions, live service models, and web media streaming services exist in many digital stores where purchases remain on the company server. Feels like buying a condo in someone else's building. There are many complexities involved. Story 4. Service fees and convenience fees have essentially become another form of tax. But instead of the government, it's private entities adding extra charges as a cost of doing business. The common example is concert tickets. A $25 ticket price can total $50 with fees. When I was renting, if I paid my rent with anything other than a physical check, there was a fee. Why is there a $10 fee for me to pay you faster and with less effort than a physical check? Removing the human aspect of paying a clerk to receive and deposit physical checks saves the landlord or management company time and money, yet it's a mandatory add-on that generates extra revenue without being significant enough for anyone to object strongly or resort to mailing physical checks. Pretty much every business now has a separate fee from their product because everyone is so accustomed to just paying them as the standard. Even restaurants. Why am I paying an additional 3.5% to eat at your establishment? The justification is often rising labor and food costs, which is questionable. If your business model can't support the costs involved in your product's price, you have a poor business model. What a disappointment. Story 5. You own nothing and will be happy. Software as a service. Always online games. Only digital gaming platforms. You will pay triple for less because you can. Loans for depreciating assets. Store credit cards. Story 6. Dealerships and their fees and market adjustment price increases. In most countries, dealerships are run by car manufacturers themselves and do not have issues with extra fees. Additionally, discounts are significantly better. Story 7. Doing taxes. Not paying taxes, I consider that the price of having a functional society. But having to do my taxes every year? The Internal Revenue Service knows exactly how much I owe. The only reason most of us need to play this game is so a handful of accounting companies can take advantage of uninformed Americans. Yes, there are people with complicated taxes. You should go to a certified tax accountant, not some unreliable service that could ruin your taxes. For the rest of you, it's basic math. The forms are quite simple. The Internal Revenue Service should send me a bill or a check every April 15th, not make it some tedious paperwork ritual. Story 8. Banks charge fees for the privilege of holding your money. Meanwhile, they invest it to grow shareholder profits. Story 9. The relationship between hospitals and insurance inflates prices to unreasonable levels. The idea that government spending increases inflation leads to debates over how to fund social welfare programs and the cuts made to save money. This concept applies only to countries with a sovereign currency. Mainstream media, whether Democratic or Republican, has its issues. Story 10. Paying for a multi-year warranty or insurance on an item may not be necessary. What is not mentioned is that it typically includes a 1 to 2 year warranty at no additional cost. Story 11. Tipping culture is meant to keep prices artificially low. Why should you pay more for service when a bottle of champagne is brought instead of water? The work is fully compatible. Story 12. A certain cable company having the customer self-install cable and then charging the customer a self-installation fee. I mean, seriously, what is going on? Story 13. Microtransactions in games can often cost significantly more than the initial purchase price, while providing only a small fraction of the value. Story 14. Municipal recycling. I live in a large progressive city, and it is disheartening to realize that much of the recycling that is picked up is thrown directly into the landfill. Story 15. Paying for luggage, parking, water at concerts, drinks, resort fees in restaurants, and ticket service fees because it is $15 per ticket. Story 16. The Federal Reserve Bank. They presented a facade over past central banking efforts that faced significant opposition, misled people into believing it was a better option, and off we go. It is essentially an economic coup where banks extract an increasing percentage of wealth from U.S. workers. Recent inflation serves as a prime example. The Federal Reserve prints money and uses it to buy assets, primarily owned by the wealthy, which causes prices of those assets, such as houses and stocks, to skyrocket. This money enters the economy, and prices of consumer goods surge, while wages remain stagnant. The Federal Reserve raises interest rates, triggering an economic slowdown or recession. Workers experience economic instability, become more compliant, and endure both higher prices and job losses. The economy then normalizes, leading the Federal Reserve to lower rates and provide free liquidity in the form of cheap credit to the wealthy, allowing them to purchase items at lower prices. Eventually, wages start to increase but never return to their previous levels, and the cycle repeats. Money is extracted in the form of decreased buying power during the period between rising prices and wage increases. Workers refrain from demanding higher wages because they feel fortunate just to have a job in such challenging economic times. They divert attention toward blaming other political parties, races, immigrants, corporate greed, and individuals instead of holding the banks accountable, which control the Federal Reserve. It is a well-orchestrated scheme that is entirely legal and government-sanctioned. Story 17. Buying the newest Call of Duty every year is essentially the same game that has been reskinned, and they are charging you $70 for it. They are not even trying to hide it anymore. Story 18. People should be paid a good wage, and their employer should compensate them for exceptional service, not the customer. Story 19. Insurance primarily covers vehicles, but it applies to other areas as well. You can pay for insurance for years without ever needing to use it. Then one day, someone hits you and suddenly you're paying more each month for insurance. Additionally, insurers often try to offer you less money than your car is truly worth. As a result, you end up paying a substantial amount to them, only to receive a small fraction in return. Story 20. Taxes have become a normal part of life, but I find them very frustrating. You earn money and you pay taxes on it. You buy a house and you pay property tax. You purchase food and you pay value-added tax. Once a year, you pay personal income tax. If you buy a car, you pay taxes. If you inherit from a family member, you pay taxes. If you rent out your property, you pay taxes. If you win a lottery, you pay taxes. If you hire help, you pay taxes. The most frustrating aspect, I believe, is that there is no way to avoid paying taxes. For example, if I wanted to live a simple life with no taxes and no benefits like society or basic healthcare in return, there is no place in the world, except perhaps Somalia, where one can escape this obligation. Virtually everyone on this planet is subject to taxes. Story 21. Politics. Vote red or blue. If you're poor, you're still in trouble, not just in the United States, although that's a unique kind of madness. Income taxes. You have no choice in the matter. If you refuse, they will imprison you to keep everyone else in line. Marriage ceremonies. Even if you believe in the institution, the wedding industry is a scam that has nothing to do with love and everything to do with extracting money from you. The stock market. A company's value is based on the last price a share was sold for. So, if you have 1 billion shares and someone buys one at $1, you have a $1 billion company, even if you can't sell a second share. Yet wealthy individuals can buy Twitter on this premise but not pay taxes on it. America thinks it's free, but it is one of the most heavily propagandized nations, both internally and externally. We are told that we are all born with equal rights while pretending that billionaires' children earned their right to do nothing but live off what they own. Companies that create the most pollution should be held responsible, without realizing they profit by producing the products we buy. The only way to change this is for all of us to stop buying unnecessary things, but we no longer know how to live that way. Story 22. Inflation occurs when the government takes additional funds, passing the losses onto citizens through increased cost of living and stagnant valuations for tax purposes. Pension schemes, particularly those established by unions, resemble pyramid schemes and are beginning to feel the strain as new contributors are not joining as anticipated. Story 23. Insurance generally. I calculated how much I have spent on my homeowner's insurance versus what I receive back, and it is sadly very disproportionate. Story 24. Diamonds are essential for engagements, weddings, and anniversaries. However, there is artificial scarcity and inflated prices with claims of high resale value which often do not hold true. Additionally, there is social pressure to avoid cheap alternatives. Story 25. Homeowners associations. Why do people sign away their legal rights to some association of neighbors? What exactly do you get in return? Not having to look at a different colored house? Sparing yourself from seeing a wreath from Christmas all the way into June? You end up with neighborhood fiefdoms, and you lose your fundamental rights to make decisions about your own property. For a country that claims to love freedom so much, we certainly make efforts to keep each other away from it. Story 26. Everything about intellectual property, including patents and copyright, is essentially a state-sponsored monopoly for durations that are clearly not in the public interest. This is especially evident in the pharmaceutical industry. Story 27. Car rental. God forbid you want to know the price of the vehicle you are going to pay for, with insurance and all that included. Story 28. I wonder how much money simply vanishes every January 1st because it didn't roll over. Everyone should be allowed a health savings account, no matter what kind of health insurance they have or do not have. Story 29. Personal taxes are not company filings. They refer to the requirement for you to personally file a tax return. In the United Kingdom and in the United States, the Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs and the Internal Revenue Service already know exactly how much you owe for most people. However, if you fail to understand the lengthy, arcane, and complex tax legislation, you may face fines. Here is the issue. No rational individual would deliberately get their taxes wrong. However, the premise of personal tax filing legislation is that you should be penalized with interest, basically for not understanding tax regulations better than the tax authority themselves, which is onerous and absurd. It is the worst of legal fictions because it is normalized and preposterous. Story 30. Having to download applications from fast food restaurants to access menu prices from 3 years ago is frustrating. For example, the convenience store near my house used to sell sodas for $2 or $3, but now they sell a soda for $3.50. If you use the app, it's $2 or $4. It's very frustrating that we have to download applications to save money when companies used to offer prices normally. Story 31. Social Security for young people. Put into a plan by force a significant portion of your income, and you are unlikely to receive back even a fraction of what it could have been. If the government had not taken thousands of dollars from my wife and me through the 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, 2000s, and 2010s, we would not need Social Security. Story 32. As a small business owner, I often feel pressured to sponsor various events and causes. Additionally, the tipping culture has become overwhelming, with many expecting me to round up their totals. Story 33. At least in my country, the cost of housing is quite high. The prices for a new home are too high, and securing approval for a mortgage is only possible if you combine two incomes. A few days ago, I saw an apartment that was just a room with a bathroom and a kitchenette, with no space for a laundry machine and no balcony, priced at nearly $80,000, which is a significant amount in my country. Story 34. The 9/10 of a cent included in the price of gas is something we are so accustomed to that we hardly notice it anymore. However, it is the only thing besides the millage rate on property taxes, which is 1/1000th of a dollar, that I am aware of. Story 35. The majority of charities operate with significant issues, as many are scams where a large portion of the funds is misappropriated by leadership and spent on extravagant events for their personal gain. Very little is allocated to the intended causes, if at all. Story 36. We were paying $1,200 a month for coverage since my significant other's company didn't offer any insurance. In 20 years, we never met the deductible. Story 37. Clothes that last maybe a year before eventually disintegrating. A good pair of jeans used to last multiple generations. I bought a pair of jeans, and it started ripping at the seams a few months in at the back pocket. Story 38. Debt-based money is a slavery trap that we are born into. It is in plain sight, yet almost nobody realizes it exists. Story 39. Shipping charges on items that can fit in an envelope. I just paid $37 for some baskets that wouldn't even fill a small box meant for a deck of playing cards. This is ridiculous. Story 40. Video games often launch with numerous bugs. We should refrain from pre-ordering and purchasing microtransactions. Story 41. The credit bureaus are private companies that collect your data and sell it. They refer to themselves as a bureau to appear more official and authoritative. The credit scores they assign are essentially arbitrary. They only hold meaning because we collectively agree that they do. Story 42. U.S. citizenship is often perceived as a presumed status, while civil rights can be viewed as privileges. In contrast, the former status of individuals, referred to as state citizens, is now termed nationals, who possess God-given rights and full access to the Constitution, rights that U.S. citizens do not have. Story 43. Many financial institutions refuse to provide their services or goods unless you agree to a deal that pays them interest over an extended period of time. Story 44. Insurance is a form of legalized gambling. You are placing a bet with the insurer for a payout in the event of a disaster. Story 45. The gym makes many questionable health claims and promotes unreliable supplements. It encourages unrealistic body standards, targets specific addictive behaviors, and is often associated with drug use. The fact that gyms operate in shopping centers should be a hint, yet many discussions revolve around the idea that everyone should go to the gym. You don't need a gym to be healthy. Just avoid driving everywhere and perhaps engage in a game on the weekends. You are also not required to look like a lumberjack unless you are one. Story 46. Invoice fee. They add approximately $7 for sending you a paper invoice by mail. It is even worse if they charge a fee for sending it electronically. Story 47. Car insurance rates and various health insurance options. Additional fees for choosing to pay with a card instead of cash or mail. Story 48. Insurance in general operates on a business model that often seeks ways to avoid providing the services for which you pay. Health insurance, in particular, can be perceived as cheaper to deny service than to fulfill the obligations covered by premiums. Story 49. Share economy businesses, such as food delivery applications and ride-sharing services, are typically priced low enough for an extended period to disrupt established companies until they dominate the market and push out competitors. After achieving this dominance, they raise prices, leaving consumers no better off and possibly worse than under the previous model. This phenomenon also applies to subscription streaming services, where the issue is more about fragmented service offerings than outright market dominance. Story 50. Landlords often have no intention of returning the security deposit, regardless of your efforts to maintain and clean the apartment when leaving. There is little point in properly cleaning before departure. I ask them to inspect the apartment to communicate their intentions regarding the deposit before I determine the cleaning level. Story 51. Built-in gratuity at stores. I bought an apple juice at the Minneapolis airport during a connecting flight from a regular snack shop, and it had built-in gratuity. Story 52. Being charged for delivery and returns for goods purchased online. Being charged for parking at shopping centers. Service charges at restaurants. Story 53. Why do people keep asking the same questions? A quick search on Reddit for "What is a scam that is normalized?" shows numerous identical threads with hundreds or thousands of replies. I am genuinely curious. Story 54. News informing us about the weather is simply repeating the National Weather Service, which actually does the forecasting work. A law was passed prohibiting the National Weather Service from creating an app to deliver that information directly because local news relies on weather to attract viewers and sell advertisements for unnecessary products. Story 55. Not here, but in the United States, based on information shared online. Having debt. Building credit just makes you dependent on others, yet everyone acts like it's normal. Story 56. Hospital prices. I had an MRI 2 weeks ago. I requested a quote a week before the scan, but I still haven't received a price. I can't wait to see how much they will charge me. Story 57. Pet insurance. I have to pay an additional 20% of any claim for my pet because he is over the age of 10. My poor dog was attacked in the park by another dog, and I have to pay an extra 20% simply because he is older. Other factors, such as the fact that he was attacked from behind by a dog 3 times his size, are ignored. Age would not have affected his ability to defend himself against an off-lead, aggressive dog that attacked him. Story 58. One such scam is the practice of charging high fees for basic services or products that were once affordable or included at no cost. Story 59. Paying sales tax on an item multiple times can be problematic. In my province, when I buy a used car, sales tax is applied. That car can be sold multiple times, and sales tax is applied each time. Story 60. Sales tax on a house when selling it. This house has already been taxed previously. Why is it being taxed again? Story 61. Insurance covers various types. You pay the monthly fee and may never use it, never seeing a return on your money. However, when you do need it, you go through a claims process only to find you are not covered or, my favorite, that you haven't met your deductible. I pay my deductible every month. Story 62. I don't know if this happens in more countries, but where I am originally, it doesn't. In the UK, there is a huge scam regarding housing. Freehold, sharehold, and shared ownership. I have never seen a bigger scam in my whole life. Back home, everything is freehold. You buy it and you own it, period. It's one of the things I would change immediately if I were Prime Minister for a day. Story 63. Health insurance is necessary to cover the high cost of healthcare, but healthcare is often made more expensive by insurance companies. Insurance companies demand significant discounts for referring patients to specific contracted in-network facilities. As a result, hospitals must conceal the true cost of services and present insurance companies with an excessively inflated price so that after applying the 50 to 90% discount, they can still profit. For example, a $100 X-ray may be billed at $1,500. Furthermore, insurance companies advocate for laws that restrict hospitals from disclosing the real price to uninsured individuals, arguing that it would constitute price gouging aimed at those with insurance. During a lunch conversation with a radiologist, we discussed this issue and performed some calculations for a CT scan. We factored in his salary, the nurses' salaries, the cost of the CT machine divided by the total number of uses and maintenance, estimated at 15,000 total scans, and any additional relevant expenses, including the cost to build the examination room. The total cost amounted to approximately $200 to $300 per scan, while the hospital charged $10,000 for each CT scan and up to $20,000 depending on the reason for the scan. Story 64. Banking involves fractional reserve banking, where banks put 9 times more cash into circulation than they actually have. This is why if everyone were to show up at their bank and request to withdraw their cash, the banks would go bankrupt. Story 65. I have been looking at this thread for around 30 to 40 minutes, and I haven't seen a single comment mentioning garage prices, which is surprising to me. Story 66. Crypto, by a wide margin. Gym memberships, cancellation fees, questionable college degrees, service fees for online purchases. Story 67. Health insurance requires you to meet a deductible in order to pay less, and the deductible can often be unreasonable. Doctors frequently face denial from insurance companies when requesting basic services. They submit notes but often still get rejected. When patients call their insurance providers, they are informed that procedures are covered, but when doctors call, they are told the opposite. Why is there such a discrepancy in information? Story 68. It's hard to tell anymore since just about everything has been monetized in one way or another. My engagement with this platform is generating revenue for someone. Story 69. I may get some criticism for this, but tipping in some restaurants can be confusing. At the last restaurant my partner and I visited, the only interaction we had with a staff member was when someone showed us to our seats, which took about 25 seconds, and when someone brought us our food, which took about a minute. All food ordering was done online with no interaction with the staff, and everything felt a bit isolated. Then, to be asked for a tip at the end of the meal seemed unreasonable. I wondered, what am I paying a tip for? That being said, I have been genuinely happy to tip at other places if the service was worth it. If I feel that someone goes the extra mile, I'm glad to reward that effort if I can. Story 70. Everything is a subscription service now. You will own nothing, and you will like it. Every major company. Story 71. Sharing personal or private information with a company essential for daily life, such as telehealth or car ownership, which they then sell to data brokers to profit further from you. Story 72. Organized religion where people feel pressured to donate a portion of their monthly salaries or contribute time and effort for the cause. Story 73. As I read the comments, it seems that every company is doing everything they can to scam the people. Story 74. Tipping. I would dislike it there and would seem like a total jerk because I would be arguing about it. Story 75. Ticketmaster. I bought 3 tickets to a regular season lacrosse game last year. Each ticket was $35, but with fees it came out to approximately $150 for all 3. I could have bought a 4th ticket for that cost. Story 76. Duty-free has been shown to be more expensive than regular stores, and since it is tax-free, you end up paying a premium for nothing. Story 77. In Australia, people who have a health benefits card can get prescriptions filled at the pharmacy for a government-set price. Once you reach a certain predefined spending amount at pharmacies nationwide, the government covers the full cost. Many pharmacies charge an extra $1 under the pretext that you will reach the free prescriptions faster. If, like me, you only have 1 or 2 prescriptions a month, you'll never reach the free threshold that year. I asked the pharmacies if I could receive a refund for all the extra dollars I paid over the year, but the answer was no. They just pocket the money. I do not return to those pharmacies unless it benefits me. There is a large pharmacy chain in Australia that charges the correct amount, where I receive my medications and more, so they end up with most of our business. It is unfortunate that the other pharmacies, which charge the extra $1, do not realize they are harming their own business. My rant is over. Story 78. Trade schools do not provide a decent chance of getting a job in the field for which you train. If you approach a contractor and mention that you attended a trade school without any experience, they will likely dismiss you. This hard lesson cost me $16,000. Story 79. Alleged designer brands are a scam. Timeshares, auto leases, social media platforms, class action lawsuits, credit monitoring, services that claim to remove you from data aggregator databases, rental car insurance, half of the prescription medication you take, free applications. Story 80. One time, I was looking around and accidentally clicked on an advertisement about a computer virus. I realized it was a scam after some thought, but it's so normalized now that most people don't recognize it's fake. By the way, my computer runs fine. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.